Welcome to the Lizzie Borden Podcast, Episode 38.
The Lizzie Borden Podcast is sponsored by Belanger Books, featuring all new adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Solar Ponds, Carnacki the Ghost Finder, and occult detectives from the pulp era to the 21st century. From Lovecraftian horror to the wondrous worlds of H.G. Wells, Belanger Books has it all. Visit them today at belangerbooks.com.
I am your host, Stephanie Corey, filling in for the late Richard Behrens, author of the Lizzie Borden Girl Detectives series of mysteries. The Lizzie Borden Podcast is the only podcast entirely devoted to the study of the Borden murders of 1892, Lizzie Borden, and the world that shaped her, Fall River, Massachusetts, and beyond. Produced by Nine Muses Books and Anna Behrens, the podcast explores the many facets of the case, the crime, the culture, the courtroom drama, and Lizzie's lasting impact on popular imagination. From nursery rhymes and trial transcripts to fictional retellings and forgotten histories, each episode may uncover a new angle on the case that never quite closed. I am joined today by the brilliant Anna Behrens, a devoted Sherlockian and fellow Lizzie Borden aficionado, for a conversation that explores an intriguing literary crossover. What happens when the world's most famous fictional detective steps into one of America's most infamous real-life murder cases? We're diving into 4 imaginative works that bring Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson to Fall River, Massachusetts to investigate the 1892 Borden murders. We'll look at Sherlock Holmes and the Incident in Fall River by D.A. Joy, Holmes and Watson by David Ruffle, Sherlock Holmes and the Fall River Tragedy by Owen Haskell, and Sherlock Holmes, the Maplecroft Message by Joe DeSantis. And now, the Lizzie Borden Podcast presents Sherlock Holmes and the Borden Murders. Welcome to the Lizzie Borden Podcast, where history, myth, and mystery collide. I'm your host, Stephanie Corey, Lizzie Borden scholar, researcher, and enthusiast. And today's episode is a true treat for fans of both true crime and classic detective fiction. I'm joined by the brilliant Anna Behrens, the producer of this podcast, and a devoted Sherlockian and fellow Lizzie Borden aficionado, for a conversation that explores an intriguing literary crossover. What happens when the world's most famous fictional detective steps into one of America's most infamous real-life murder cases? We're delving into 4 imaginative works that bring Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson to Fall River, Massachusetts, to investigate the 1892 Borden murders. We'll look at Sherlock Holmes and the Incident in Fall River by D.A. Joy, Holmes and Watson by David Ruffle, Sherlock Holmes and the Fall River Tragedy by Owen Haskell, and Sherlock Holmes, the Maplecroft Message by Joe DeSantis. These books may differ in tone, structure, and conclusions, but each of them reflects the enduring fascination with the Borden case and the irresistible pull of Sherlock Holmes as the ultimate problem solver. So grab your magnifying glass and maybe a hatchet-proof alibi, and join us as we discuss how these authors bring Lizzie and Holmes together in fiction, and what it says about our ongoing obsession with both. Hi, Anna.
Hi, and thanks for that wonderful introduction.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I don't know if I'd characterize myself as brilliant, but...
And I'm the one who wrote it, so there we go. So that's the way it works. We both came up with questions for one another, so that's sort of the format of today, like we normally do with our interviewees. But I think some of this information about Sherlock Holmes needs a bit of explanation, and you're the perfect person to do that. So before we get started on the case and the books themselves in specifics, I wanted to ask you, since all of the books we read, and we both read all 4 books, combine this fictional character, Sherlock Holmes, and the real life person of Lizzie Borden, I'm curious if you think these authors depict the fictional Holmes accurately in terms of the official canon of stories that Arthur Conan Doyle wrote, or are they sort of brand new or original representations of this famous sleuth?
Well, I think they certainly tried to do that. They tried to make it the real Holmes and in some cases Watson, because Watson's not in every story, by referring to things, other cases they've done or how they operate and all that. And I think they've done a reasonable job of portraying Holmes. They don't have as much of the aphorisms that he used. I mean, he's always using idioms and expressions throughout the stories. And I think he had some rather clever deductions in the original canon stories, but I don't see that as much here, but it's very difficult to write like Arthur Conan Doyle. I mean, he certainly was a gifted writer. He was able to boil down the scene and set the scene in just a few sentences. I mean, he didn't use that flowery language that many of the other Victorian writers used. His simple but really effective. And I think he wrote Everyman. I mean, his stories were in Strand magazine. That's a magazine that people could pick up. It was relatively inexpensive. They could read it on the train during their commutes to work. And he really wrote stories that could be relatable to everyone. So I think that considering what big shoes to fill, I think these authors did a reasonable job of portraying Holmes.
These are called pastiches. What does that mean?
Well, it means, to me, what it means is they take the original characters of Holmes and Watson, but they create original stories that were sort of like an homage to the original canon of Arthur Conan Doyle stories. And they create their own time and place. They're not all written in the Victorian or Edwardian era. Some authors write pastiches that take place in the future, or even science fiction or whatever. There's many pastiches, but they use the original characters, and I think they try to keep much of what Doyle did in the way that they behave and speak, but they're completely original.
Okay. So there are some Sherlock Holmes terms bandied around in these books. For instance, the Great Hiatus, and places like the Reichenbach Falls in Switzerland, and names like a Norwegian explorer named Sigerson or
Sigerson.
Sigerson. Can you tell us the background of these things before we start that are mentioned in some of these books? And after you do you think a person needs to have a knowledge of them and what they mean to read these stories we're discussing today?
Well, the Great Hiatus is a period from about 1891 to 1894, and that's according to the Baring-Gould chronology. There are many different chronologies that Sherlockians have come up with, because in the stories, the dates aren't always clear or consistent. So people have written chronologies as to what story happened when, but generally it's agreed upon the hiatus is from 1891 to 1894. In the adventure of The Final Problem, Sherlock Holmes fights his nemesis, the criminal mastermind, Professor Moriarty. And they're in Switzerland at the Reichenbach Falls, which is a real place that Arthur Conan Doyle visited. Treacherous falls. So, and this always cracks me up. These two brilliant men have basically a fight, a physical fight, and they fall over the falls and presumed dead. They're both presumed to be dead. Even before they fight, Holmes even writes Watson a note that's almost sounds like not a suicide note, but a goodbye note that he's probably going to die. So everyone presumes that they're dead, and Holmes is dead.
And the public thought he was dead, right? That
Yes.
he killed off Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, and there was a lot of public outrage about that because Sherlock was very popular these stories. So Holmes is presumed dead by Watson and everyone else. And so what happens is he shows up again a few years later in a story called The Empty House. And it turns out only his brother Mycroft, who works for the British government, knew that Holmes was still alive. And I guess he was giving him money and keeping his apartment preserved. And Holmes has been working behind the scenes to kind of capture Moriarty's gang and clean up some criminal activity while people all thought he was dead. So,
But he has to do that, doesn't he? Because something about they're after him, and if he's afraid they'll kill him.
yeah, but remember, they think he's dead. So,
Right.
yeah,
But he
right.
can go after them quietly from.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So he uses an alias called Sigerson, who is a Norwegian explorer. So some of the time, this is the few years have gone by, but he's Sigerson. So he even tells Watson when he gets back and to London, and he says to Watson, guess what, I'm still alive. He says that, oh, you probably heard about Sigerson, and I bet you didn't know it was your friend, it was me. So during the hiatus, Holmes has traveled around the world, Europe, Asia, Middle East, even in the United States. So the Borden murders happen August 4th, 1892. So that's during Holmes' great hiatus. So the writers who specifically say Holmes is in America, it is during the great hiatus, so it's not completely out of the question that he could have been there. Since it's all fiction, I don't think that one really has to have the knowledge of these events prior to reading the stories. However, I really think it makes it more interesting to the reader to know this, like, oh, that's how they're saying why is Holmes in Fall River? Oh, this is why. They're kind of, this is why he's in America. Probably not realistic that Watson's with him because it is the great hiatus and Watson believes him to be dead, but like I say, it's fiction, so I think that's okay.
Well, a couple of the books take place after the hiatus. They go back later.
That's true. That's true. Okay. Right. We do have to talk about those timelines a little bit. Yeah. So the second part of your question was, do I think it helps? And I would say it definitely helps. Just like knowing the Lizzie Borden story generally helps, because understanding what it was all about and what happened there. It would be helpful to know that prior to reading these stories, but it's not necessary.
Okay, got it. So you have a question for me?
I do. I kind of wanted to talk about Lizzie Borden. And there is a wide world of lasting fascination with her case. Can you tell us about that? And also, is part of the fascination that likely the case will never be solved as to who killed her father and stepmother?
Well, of course, since it's an unsolved mystery, it is definitely piqued the interest of true crime aficionados. There's that word again. People who care about that kind of thing, which is, I'm going to be the one to solve the case. I think that's what brought me into the story. It wasn't the gore or the disruption of the family unit that made me want to care about this case and study it. It was, I'm going to be the one to solve it. So I think people approach it like if they know enough, then they will be able to do that. And they'll be the one that can then say definitively, this is what happened. But what ends up happening, on the other hand, or because of all your study, is you realize you'll never know. You'll realize there's not enough information, that authors who claim to know are nitpicking and picnicking on facts and situations and using the case to further their own theory of the case and sort of relegating the other facts to the dustbin so that all you hear are things that support their claim. So there's that issue. There's also, it's the most intriguing story besides, I think, Jack the Ripper that I can think of. But in this case, it's a locked door mystery. There's only so many people at home, and there's a very small circle of suspects. So it has to be one of them, you think. If and it's not, it's somebody from the outside. And how is that possible? So there's only a small number of solutions to it. And yet you'd think with such a small number of solutions, everybody would agree on an answer. But the problem is she was acquitted. There wasn't enough evidence to convict her. That's true. It's not that the jury was like, oh, she's a woman, she never would have done it. There wasn't enough evidence to convict her. And because there wasn't enough evidence to convict her, there's not enough evidence to convict anybody. It's the same story for any suspect. You either think she did it and the justice got it wrong, or you think somebody else did it and you try to prove it. So it's going to last forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And now I think Netflix is doing a monster series. It'll be released next year. The same group that brought you the Jeffrey Dahmer series and the Menendez Brothers series, and this year we'll be releasing the Ed Gein series. They're going to release an episode series on the Borden case, which is interesting to me because it's called Monster, but all the other people were definitely guilty and definitely convicted in a court of law. This is the first case that they're doing where she wasn't. So is she the monster? I don't understand that part. But we'll see. We'll see. The other shows are all docudramas. Will this be a docudrama or will this be a fictional account? And since we're talking about fiction, fictionalizing Lizzie Borden today, which is sort of what this is all about, there's been a lot of fiction about Lizzie Borden written where she's a kind of, I don't know, in every regard she's presented, where she's actually like a zombie hunter, I think, or something. And she's committing the crime in weird ways. The most famous one is by Evan Hunter, who is Ed McBain. The most famous fiction book about it is not only Elizabeth Ingstrom's book, but Evan Hunter's book, Ed McBain, where he has a candlestick as the murder weapon, and she's a lesbian, and those kinds of things. So the wide latitude is taken with this case because we know so little. So they try to fill in the spaces with other things. And I think that's what these books do. They use the character of Sherlock Holmes as their mouthpiece for their theory of the case. And they have Holmes try to solve this case. And in some cases, other cases that are brought up during the course of the story. Several of the books, I think 2 of them, have other murders that are involved in the location. So he's not only solving that, he's solving these. It's an interesting sort of mix of fictional and non-fictional.
And I like what you said, that sometimes there's this presumption that Lizzie is guilty. Like, just tying it back to Sherlock Holmes, there's a Sherlock Holmes museum on Baker Street in London. And in one of the stories, it says that in Holmes's bedroom, he has photographs, like a kind of a rogues gallery of all the criminals. And there is a photo of Lizzie Borden there.
As a criminal?
As a criminal, as one of the rogue. Yeah, one of the people in the rogues gallery. So I think there's this general assumption, who people who don't know really much about the case, that she indeed was guilty. I mean, if you think about the doggerel, she took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. I know I did that as a kid, jump rope rhyme. And I just assumed, I didn't know who Lizzie Borden was, but I had assumed she was a murderer, double murderer. I think that is the general assumption, that she's guilty. For those who don't know much about the case, they don't know she was acquitted.
Do you think that placing the fictional with the real like this is a good way to tell a story that's an unsolved mystery? And do you think one has to be an expert on both subjects to do the stories justice? Because I don't.
You don't? Okay, well, tell me about what you think.
Well, I think that there's so much unknown about Borden. And because they're works of fiction, I mean, let's just get right down to it. They say they're novels or they're works of fiction. A fiction book is fanciful. It comes out of the head of the author. It can be based on other things like historical fiction, but this isn't necessarily historical fiction because of the use of the main character in all of the stories is Sherlock Holmes, which is a fictional person. To me, it's not historical fiction. It's sort of fantasy fiction, but not fantasy in the terms of like supernatural or that kind of thing, but in terms of intermixing the real and the imagined, or the real and the fiction. The whole book is fiction. Then they can do exactly what they want with her. And they do. Every single author does that. They they create a Lizzie Borden of their own choosing, not someone that maybe someone who studies the case would recognize. But that to me is okay if the book itself makes sense. I'm a real strong advocate for giving a lot of these fictional sort of accounts a whole lot of room to play around with motive and character, as long as it makes sense within the story itself. I loved the rock opera about Lizzie Borden. I think it's one of the best things that's ever been created about the case. And it's not true to reality. I mean, it's a rock opera. So the characters are changed in a way that goes to the service of the story they're telling. And so because the story makes sense within and of itself, it's its own little art form. It's its own little world. And it's disconnected from the reality of the Borden case. And I think these books all do that. They disconnect Lizzie from history and Sherlock Holmes on top of her. And because is she trying to outwit him because she thinks she's smarter than he is? Or is he always going to prevail because he's Sherlock Holmes? So those kinds of questions are really the crux of the story. He's going to solve the case.
Yeah.
In every case, you know he's going to get it. And it depends on what the author comes up with as the answer. I'm okay with that. And like I said, I give these stories wide latitude. I have a problem with typos and major factual mistakes, but typos are typos. They're mistakes. They're bad editing, not bad writing. And the same with the historical things. They've changed the timelines in order to, how do we say, in order to make sense of their own world that they've created. And I think that that's fine in fiction. I think that that's perfectly fine. You're not going to read any of these books and go, oh, that's what happened.
Well, I do have to say that from a Sherlockian perspective, there are many Sherlockians who like to believe that Sherlock Holmes was indeed a real person. It's called playing the game. I mean, I'm not saying they actually believe it, but I think they enjoy pretending to believe it, because then they start working on the real life of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And it's kind of this thing among Sherlockians. Doyleans, however, really don't do that, because they honor the writings of Arthur Conan Doyle, because as if you play the game, if you pretend they're real, that means that Watson really wrote the stories, not Arthur Conan Doyle.
Oh, right,
And Arthur Conan Doyle is the literary agent. That's his role. So some people approach this as if, well, Lizzie Borden was real and Sherlock Holmes was real, and
I
they
see.
at the same time. So
Okay.
it's fine to put them in a story together. Obviously, it's a fictional account because Sherlock Holmes really wasn't a real person. And even if he were, he wasn't in Fall River in 1892.
For real, he wasn't,
For real,
because
for
he's a
real.
fictional character. And it isn't even like Conan Doyle was here, right? Conan
No.
Doyle wasn't in Fall River. So it's not a
No.
case that he would have been interested in that at that particular time.
But he would have been well aware of it because it was in all the newspapers at the time. So
but he didn't write about it.
But he did not write about it.
Or refer to it in any way.
Not that I'm aware of, no. I mean, he tried, I don't think he wrote, like, that's pretty gruesome, the crimes. And he didn't really write with gruesome crimes like that. It wouldn't have been appropriate for the Sherlock Holmes stories at that time.
One of the books, and only one of the books, has its author, Owen Haskell, as someone who has written a bit about Lizzie Borden case and was a local resident in the Fall River area. His book is Sherlock Holmes and the Fall River Tragedy. It's a brief book. It's a short book. It's available, I think, I don't know, on eBay more than any place else, because it was a limited edition paperback, limited to 1,000 copies. Is his book the most satisfying overall to you in how the Holmes character is presented? Because he also seems to know a great deal about the character of Sherlock Holmes.
He does. I think, yeah, I enjoyed his story. I think that he definitely, I would say, was most effective in the Lizzie Borden part, getting some of those facts or all of those facts more correct than some of the other writers did. And I think he did a fine job of representing Holmes in a realistic way as he was created by Arthur Conan Doyle. So
In
yeah,
that book, in that particular book, the book is a weird, like, double timeline. So
yeah.
the book is written in 1927
Right, by Watson.
by Watson, but it's not supposed to be released till 1993 at the 100th anniversary of the murders. 1992, sorry, at the 100th anniversary of the murders. So it's written and put away after Lizzie Borden and Emma Borden are dead,
Right.
right? So it's about the Great Hiatus as well.
Yes.
Apparently Holmes comes back and reveals to Watson that he was in Fall River and he got there on the day the trial started.
Mhm.
So he was present for the aftermath, the year after the murders. And so he visited the trial every day, but he also visited the crime scene and he interviewed people, and he was able to come to a conclusion in a very contemporaneous time frame. But he didn't want the story to be published till long after he was dead in the story,
Mhm.
because he was claiming that everybody committed perjury, that these real people, right, committed perjury. The police, the Lizzie, the witnesses, Emma, they were all lying on the stand. He doesn't really say why they were lying on the stand, but they were all lying on the stand to make themselves look good, apparently. And so he didn't feel like it would be safe from lawsuits, I guess, to publish it sooner. So Watson writes it down in 1927. I don't know why he didn't write it down before they died, but apparently he didn't. And then he comes up with this very interesting conclusion as to the end. And I don't know if we want to tell each book's solution or let people read them themselves, but it was a unique one and different than any of the others books as far as what Holmes said happened.
Well, I kind of think we should give the just say spoiler alert, we're gonna tell the endings just because I think we want to kind of compare and contrast them.
Okay, so
Um,
this one, Lizzie did it, and her accomplice was Dr. Bowen,
was Dr. Bowen because Dr. Bowen hated Andrew, right?
apparently.
In
Yes.
in the story, right? And he gave Lizzie a surgical gown, which is what she wore when she murdered them, right? Which is
Right.
why she wasn't all bloody. Yeah, that's the conclusion that
And he whisked away the evidence. He took the hatchet and the surgical gown away when he went back across the street. Like, he went across the street before he went to send the telegram. And there's that curious reason why he went across the street. And Bowen says it's because he needed to tell his wife what happened. But the author insinuates that it was him squirreling away the evidence that he could later destroy.
right.
Because he hates Andrew and he has a fondness for Lizzie, although it doesn't go beyond the fondness. It's not an untoward relationship.
No,
He does help her. And Emma's innocent. She doesn't know anything about it. But Lizzie is the killer, and she gets
right.
away with it because there is no evidence in the house to convict her. So, and the painted dress that is burned is simply a dress that has paint on it.
Paint
It's
on,
not
right.
anything big. I think it's interesting to have Dr. Bowen be that accomplice. I think a lot of people wonder about him. It's not entirely impossible that, you know, that this is a solution. It's not a crazy solution at all. People wonder about what was in that bag he took back and forth from house to house, and why he drugged her a lot, and if that had something to do with her inability to know where she was at any particular time. So she couldn't really incriminate herself because she
Right.
was.
he gave her morphine, right?
Right.
And that was after the murders to
Right.
kind of calm her down, right? That's
Well, as if she needed to calm down, but yeah, women weren't supposed to be hysterical, even if both of their parents were just murdered in their house and they're still in the house. Ew. Just the whole concept of it is
I
just,
know.
ew,
And then
I can't imagine. I can imagine being hysterical, but I can't imagine staying in the house that had happened in. I think that Owen does a really good job. He uses a lot of
the
testimony.
testimony,
Yeah, the
yes,
inquest testimony and the preliminary testimony in
right,
order for Holmes to teach Watson about the story and what people said under oath and how the differences between the testimonies
yeah,
contradicted each other.
right.
And in that contradiction is the answer, according to Haskell.
And I think it kind of made it feel more factual, more real by
Well, he
doing
gets
that.
most of it right. He gets almost all of the facts of the story
Yeah,
right. And of course, whoever did it is always going to be the major fiction point since she was acquitted.
right, of course.
Right. So his book is satisfying in that way. If you've read the information, the preliminary, the inquest, you kind of skim over that stuff because you've already read it before. It's kind of like reading quotes
Right.
without footnotes. Anyway, that's the Sherlock Holmes and the Fall River tragedy. Another one that is interesting is David Ruffle, Holmes and Watson, an American Adventure. In this story, Holmes is going to spend 6 months in the United States. And he comes over in 1897 to teach 2 sessions of a course to the New York City Police Department. But it's called something else, right? It's called the New York City Bureau of Police or something like that.
Yeah, basically it's a detective school. He's supposed to be teaching them how to be good detectives.
And the way he's got it set up is the prize student from the first set of classes, which is like 11 weeks long, is going to then become his trusted assistant for the second set of classes. And then eventually that person will take over as the teacher. And so that person ends up being a guy named Hogan. And I don't remember if he ever says the guy's first name, but Hogan is supposedly kin to the Bordens and he's friends with Emma. But then Hogan also turns out to be the nephew of the chief of police, which doesn't explain the relationship to the Borden family there. He keeps saying to Holmes, you got to come to Fall River. You got to check this out. And we want to know what you think. And they go there. They go to Fall River on their break between the 2 classes. So they have a 2-week break. And just as they get there, somebody's murdered, of course. Samson Weinberger is murdered. And he happens to be, according to Hogan, this is all fictional, of course, a chemist, druggist who was killed, but he was also somebody who had also refused to sell Lizzie Borden prussic acid in 1892 on that day. And
like Eli Bentz.
Exactly. Yeah. And then right when he's going to go check out that murder, another murder is discovered by Honora Walters, who's murdered. And apparently she worked in a shop and had caught Lizzie Borden stealing. And so there seems to be a Lizzie Borden motive for both of these murders. It takes Holmes a while, but he figures out the connection between the murders and he solves both of those murders. And it turns out they have nothing to do with Lizzie Borden. He's great at that deduction because it's fictional on fictional. It's fiction on fiction. So these murders didn't really happen. These people didn't really exist. And Holmes gets to decide how they were related and how it happened. And I thought, oh, that's very clever. That's very clever. I like that. That's fine. But then his solution, tell us what his solution was. Do you remember?
Oh, well,
to the Borden murders.
Yes, he believed that Lizzie Borden was guilty. But when talking with Emma, he basically says it's inconclusive. He doesn't tell her that he believes Lizzie did it.
Because he doesn't want to make her feel bad, but he really can't prove it, right? Now,
right.
is that Sherlockian to
That he
say,
doesn't.
I can't prove it, but I think this is what happened, or I know this is what happened, but I can't prove it? Did he do that in any other story that Conan Doyle wrote?
That's a good question. Usually he solves the cases. He doesn't always tell the police
Right.
if he knows who the criminal is. If he decides that maybe it was justified, or he doesn't tell the police. So he lets the person go, and he's done that in several stories.
Well, because
Um,
she's also been acquitted, she can't be tried again. So
right.
does,
Right.
in this case, it figures into his decision not to press the issue, right?
Right. And I think also he doesn't want to tell her that she was guilty, maybe try to preserve the
Well, she doesn't
relationship.
want her to be afraid of her sister,
Yeah.
but he
Or
says, like, oh, I know she knows. Like, she has to know. She has to have knowledge that her sister did it. But she's just lying to herself. But they have to live together, so I'm going to let it go. So
yeah.
it's a kind of an unsatisfying thing because there's no justice, except for the two fictional murders, which I think there is justice, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he gets it in that way. That was kind of ingenious. And then they go back off to New York
Yes.
to teach some more.
And I
So,
just wanted to say this story it's published by MX Publishing, and it was published in 2015, so I believe it's still available.
and
Um,
MX Publishing is a big Sherlock Holmes publishing company, isn't
Definitely, yeah.
it? Okay. So they
Yeah.
published this book because of the Sherlock Holmes side of it.
Yes.
Yeah. This book includes a lot of photographs. So it includes photographs of the real places and the real people, and then creates these photographs of these fictional people. And there's a photograph with the name underneath it for like Hogan. And I think that's hilarious. And so that it intermixes the fictional with the reality in a way that's sort of ingenious because then you believe it.
Yeah, I thought it was well done, and I didn't find the ending so unsatisfactory. I really thought, yeah, that makes sense. She can't be tried again, so he knows the truth, but he doesn't need to share it with the police because they can't do anything, and why disturb the relationship with among the sisters. So,
It's now that we talk about it, it seems like a mature answer
yeah.
because it's not sensationalizing the Borden murders. It's sort of accepting the reality of the situation at hand, which she can't be tried again. So what's the point? But why did he want? He was called there to soothe or to answer Emma's question, but then
Yes.
he sort of gives her this sort of half-ass answer, which is like, well, he says the jury got it right. It can't be proven. So it's like, oh, okay.
Well, there is a story, a Sherlock Holmes story called A Case of Identity, where a young woman, and we know that she's not particularly bright, but she's got a little bit of money, and she lives with her mother and her stepfather. Her stepfather's actually much younger than her mother. Anyway, she's interested in having a meeting somebody, getting married, so she wants to go to this ball. Well, she meets someone there that she's going to marry. It turns out to be her stepfather in disguise.
Ew.
And then on their wedding day, he doesn't show up. He skips out. And the reason he did this is because he wanted to keep her money, because she had money from a relative that she would just give it to her mother and stepfather, and she actually had her own job, and she says, oh, I don't need that much money. But had she gotten married, the money would go with her and become her husband. And also her mother knew about it too. So it was kind of
Ew.
creepy. Holmes figures this out like almost immediately what happened. And but he doesn't tell her. She's the one who hires him to find her fiance. He doesn't tell her at the end. He doesn't, he said, oh, she'll never believe me, kind of real cop-out answer. So this is really hotly debated among Sherlockians.
It's very
Um,
misogynistic for him not to tell his
it is.
client, who happens to be
Yeah,
a young woman.
very unsatisfactory, yes.
Oh, so those
So
kinds of things are has
so
had
yeah,
happened in the case. Yeah.
you jogged my memory when you were talking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, there was a case like that where he did it. he didn't tell. So maybe that's what the author had in mind.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. And this is another slim volume, so it's easy to read, and it's a sit down,
Yeah.
and in one sitting you can read the whole book, and it's almost like a novella as opposed to a book. It's a long
Yeah.
short story is what it is.
And I think that even if you know the solution at the end, it's worth reading. So
Okay, so the next one is a very interesting book. I use that word with quotation marks around it. It's Sherlock Holmes and the Incident in Fall River by D.A. Joy. Now, D.A. Joy says that this is historical fiction. And when you say it's historical fiction, I sort of think that means that the history is right, but the fiction is fiction. But in this case, the history is not right and the fiction is fiction. So I think he should have just called it fiction. That's just my opinion, because the history part is all screwed up. But in this one, this is where we have the great hiatus at the beginning. We actually have the death of Moriarty and him, and yes, and Sherlock Holmes deciding to pretend to be dead because of this situation, because he almost dies himself and then he doesn't. And so he writes the note, and then he scales the fall cliff face, and he decides to assume this character of Nicholas Sigerson. Sigerson, the Arctic explorer. So he's got this Norwegian Arctic explorer. So what brings him to America is he's going to do a fundraising in Boston for an Arctic exploration. Now, it isn't explained what he's going to do with this money, since he's not really an Arctic explorer. So I don't understand that part. It's sort of left dangling there. But he comes to Fall River specifically to meet with Charles Holmes, a real life person who is apparently his American relative. But he doesn't reveal that he is Sherlock Holmes, the relative of Charles Holmes. And he says in the story that he wants to check out his American relatives. So he really wants to tell Mycroft all about it, I guess, to let him know the update on the American Holmes family. And he wants to check out American relatives. So he comes to Fall River, and he also wants to exchange some money because he's got some British money and he needs to make it into American dollars. So this is weird, like, reason why he hangs around. All of a sudden, the door opens. There's been a murder. So he's there the day of the murders. He's there on August 4th, 1892, minding his own business, just going to go visit the American Holmes family. And Andrew and Abby are murdered. So he's right in the thick of it from the very beginning. So he's in Fall River at that moment. And of course, he's going to investigate because it's a big deal. It's a big murder. And the police are in over their heads. He deduces right away. He goes to visit the crime scene, and he realizes the police don't have a problem with the way they're investigating it. And so he's not there to help the police. He's never there to help the police, is he, in any of his stories?
No, and they're kind of keeping him at arm's length anyway. They don't really want him involved, I don't think. Like, they're not welcoming him, I don't think.
He also has like a relationship in this story with a woman named the Widow Wesley. Like, he has a flirtation, and then they're gonna meet up in Boston after the story's over. So I was wondering, was Sherlock Holmes ever connected to any women as romantic characters in any of his stories?
Well, the short answer is no. Some might argue that Irene Adler from Scandal in Bohemia, in that story, and this is hopefully not a spoiler alert for anyone, but she basically outwits Holmes in that story. And I think he is so impressed by her because basically he underestimated her and she outwitted him. And at the end, it's the king of Bohemia. Well, he's prince. I think he's going to be the king. He offers Holmes as a reward to basically make her go away because she was threatening the king to expose him, that an affair that she had, because he was going to get married. She was going to interfere with that. So he offers Holmes this emerald ring as a reward. And he says, no, I would rather have her photograph because she left her photograph for them to find rather than the incriminating photograph that they wanted. So a lot of people make something of a romance between Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler, but in truth, she married someone else, and then she ultimately dies not long after. So, um,
Wait, is she a real person?
no,
Okay.
she's a character,
Okay.
but it's believed that she was based on Lily Langtry, who had an affair with Queen Victoria's son, who becomes king. They had an affair in real life, and it's said that Irene Adler is based on Lily Langtry. In the story, Irene Adler is an opera singer, and Lily Langtry wasn't an opera singer, but she was a performer, so actress. So
Well,
anyway,
in this story, back to D.A.
yes.
Joy's Sherlock Holmes and the Incident in Fall River, he has Sherlock Holmes hide away in the judge's chamber in order to eavesdrop on the inquest, which her lawyer's not allowed to be there. And so he's hearing everybody's testimony, which is illegal, but okay. So because he's investigating and he's like hiding behind the arras or whatever, the
Yeah,
tapestry, and
I
he's
can see
listening to what's going on.
I can
But the
see Holmes
problem
doing
is
that.
he knows he's going to be called as a witness because he's got a subpoena. There's a moral ethical question there because they didn't let people listen to other people's testimony, and they never let people listen to
No,
other people's testimony. He's committing a bit of a problem there for me. And then secondly, he actually goes and testifies at the inquest, which of course is fictional because he's a fictional character.
yeah.
But then he gets on the stand and swears to tell the truth, and he's Sigerson.
Yes, he
So
doesn't reveal he's Sherlock Holmes for
he's
real. Yeah.
lying. He says his name is Sigerson, and he's this Norwegian explorer, and he has worked with the Swiss police before on helping them solve crime, which apparently was a Sigerson thing, I guess. So he has a level of expertise in detection that is international. And he lies. That really hit me in the middle of my forehead. And he commits perjury. So my question is, it was such a bold thing for this author to do, to have him lie. But in your opinion, would the literary Sherlock Holmes lie in like this?
Well, certainly he's like he would often say like I'm not working for the police. Like he's a consulting detective, and like I think I said earlier that he occasionally let the criminals go because he felt like it was justified what they
Right. But
were.
this is different. This
But
is
right. So what I'm trying to say, he's not always honest, let's say. But this does seem a little bit out of character. I'm not sure if Holmes would actually have done that. Would testify as someone else?
because doesn't he, while he may not respect the police, he respects the justice system
Yeah,
somehow?
yeah.
Because this
Usually,
is like flaunting that. Plus, he's going in the official record as a fictional person, but he
right.
is a fictional person. So I almost like, wait, what? It's like a mind mess in my head because he's not even real. Why would I worry? Right?
Well, if you're playing the game, you might think he's real, but yeah, it's kind of a sticky point. I agree because he didn't officially change his name. He just decided he was going to be this other character because everyone believed Sherlock Holmes was dead. So,
But in an interesting twist on all this, there's a male and a female reporter. One of them works for, I think, the Boston paper, and one of them works for the Fall River paper, I think. And anyway, they develop a romance. They've known each other for a long time. So there's this subplot where these two reporters are going to work the case and go back and forth with how they think the case should be written about in the newspaper. And they make a deal about, you write about this and I'll write about that. And then it'll look like we're fighting each other, but we're not really. And the editors will love it and it'll sell a bunch of papers. But the guy knows Sherlock Holmes and has met him before because he's been in Europe covering, I think, the Jack the Ripper cases. And apparently there's alluding to that in the story in 1888. This guy, Sigerson, he's got his eyes on him because he thinks he's not who he thinks he appears to be. So he's going to get exposed throughout the book. It's kind of this, and he keeps eluding and evading the reporter and making sure that he's not in the same place at the same time with the guy. And so there's that really interesting kind of dynamic where will he get exposed or won't he? So I like that tension in the story a lot. It does resolve itself at the end with the reporter getting to meet him, and he admits that he's Sherlock Holmes, but you can't tell anybody because if you do, I'm going to die because I'm going to get murdered. So you have to keep this to yourself until I reveal that I'm alive, and then you will be able to publish what happened. I'll give you that. But you can solve the case. I can't tell you what happened. You can solve the case because just follow your nose, just follow your nose. And so he's telling the reporter that the reporter should be able to solve the case, which is weird because I don't think Holmes had such a great relationship with reporters in his stories, did he? Would he trust the press?
I don't know that there was much made about the press in a lot of the stories. I mean,
Okay.
there certainly were a lot of police inspectors and also other detectives,
but not necessarily press people.
No.
He gives the guy a lot of credit. He thinks the guy can follow his nose and come up with the conclusion that he came up with, which I think is kind of funny. And the conclusion he comes up with, oh no, completely out of left field, right? Spoiler alert, Morse and Bowen did it.
Yes. Now explain who Morse is for.
Uncle John Morse is the uncle to Lizzie and Emma and the brother of the deceased first wife, Sarah Borden.
Who happened to be visiting.
And had his little airtight alibi, who Holmes thinks it's too airtight. It must be wrong. And he has Morse committing the crimes. But the reason why, it's really a really gross reason, he's in love with Emma and they're having a relationship.
Yeah, and Emma is his niece.
Yeah. So he's a dirty old man in my mind in this story because he's older than Emma by a bit. And Bowen's interest is in Lizzie. He's madly in love with Lizzie. And he's so in love with her that he thinks that if he does this for her, then she will lay down at his feet and they can be together forever. And even he gets her money.
Yes.
So it's not only love, it's money.
Well, yeah. And Andrew was about to change his will.
Yes. There's that always change the will thing.
Yes. Yeah. So it's
the one thing I liked about this setup, which is impossible based on the reality of the timeline of the real story. But one thing I do like about it a lot is it explains the note. Finally, somebody tackled the note because Bowen is involved in the note. And it makes total sense the way Joy, the author, explains Bowen's involvement with the note and why the note supposedly existed and then why it didn't exist. So
tell everyone about the note.
Well, the note is Lizzie says that she apparently told Bridget that Abby had a note and went out to visit a sick friend. And that's why she's not here. She apparently told her father that when he came home, and he didn't question her about that. But they never found a note, nor did anybody come forward and say they sent a note saying Abby was going to come. Please, Abby, come and help take care of my sick person.
Well, yeah. And meanwhile, Abby's dead upstairs.
And meanwhile, the whole time, Abby's dead upstairs. So there's no note. And the idea of the note has baffled people forever. Why would she say there was a note just to, I mean, people are going to look for the note. People are going to look for the person. It's a stupid thing to say if you're trying to use it as an excuse for people not to go upstairs.
But they didn't go upstairs at first because
it didn't matter if they didn't go upstairs. They could have gone upstairs right away after they found Andrew because it was Andrew that they found.
Yes.
And Andrew's dead and she tells him there's a note apparently, but he's dead. So that information doesn't matter and may not be true. But Bridget heard there was and I don't know what that matters to anybody because Bridget would never go up to the front stairs anyway. So I've never understood the placement of the note in the truth of the case. But this guy, he explains the note pretty well. And so he gets 10 points for that for me because it's such an enigma.
And what's his explanation?
Oh, you have to read the book to find out.
You're going to keep that.
I'm going to keep that because that's the best part for me.
Okay.
Like
all right. Fair enough.
Because he does do the revelation. Now, in Sherlock Holmes stories, does he sit everybody down like Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple in the drawing room and explain how everything happened to the people's faces that are guilty?
No.
Okay.
Not really. That's not a Sherlock Holmes thing. I mean, he certainly explains it. Usually the criminal is there, the police inspector, and then he'll reveal that because he keeps everything and then reveals it. Yeah.
Well, in this case, he sits down Bowen and Morse, and he tells them how it happened. So is that very Holmesian for him to do that?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
But then again, he's not gonna do anything about it. He can't do anything about it. Why can't he do anything about it? The murder just happened. The trial hasn't happened yet. Why does he tell Lizzie, oh, it's up to you to decide what you want to do with this information?
Yeah, tell your lawyer, right? He said.
But it's up to you if you want to incriminate your sister.
Oh, your sister. Wait, you're talking about Lizzie or Emma?
Well, no, he tells Lizzie.
Lizzie
goes to the jail and he tells her, make sure Mrs. Reagan is out of the room. And he tells her what he discovered and what he decided, which is Morse and Bowen. And she kind of laughs off the Bowen being in love with her part, but it's serious. So he tells her, and then she's like, well, are you going to go to the police? And he's like, no, I'm leaving it with you because it really incriminates your sister because Morse did it for her.
Oh.
Remember? Okay. Because he was in love with Morse and having a relationship with Emma. And if it would really complicate the story of the murders and make Emma part of the conspiracy.
I see. Okay.
And so and Lizzie says, no, I'm going to protect my sister.
Yes.
I'll take the fall and I'll protect my sister. And then the very next scene, again, perfectly explains Emma, you've given me away, right? Because the very next scene, Emma comes to visit and you hear Lizzie yelling at Emma and you're like, oh, that's what that was about. So he takes these unknowns, these humongo question marks in the case, and he perfectly explains them. So there is an ingeniousness to what this author does, regardless of how, I don't know, wrong the conclusion is in terms of possibility being the truth. It's okay.
Well, well, it's it was an interesting read. I mean, I'd say it's one of the more fantastical of the stories, with the idea of the love interest for both Emma and Lizzie.
Oh, they're such lovable characters, aren't they? That this man would fall for them. I remember writing you or calling you and saying, oh, I'm starting this incident at Fall River and I really like it. And you're like, really? And I was like, well, I really like the way it's written. And I did in the beginning. I thought it was like, oh, it's a Sherlock Holmes story. Oh, I get it. Oh, it's very, okay. So it's taking the canon and it's plugging in all of that into it. Sigerson and the hiatus. And I was like, oh, and it was breezy and it was interesting. And then it got to my area of expertise. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, so my whoa, Nelly. In this case, again, I have to say it's fiction. So why not?
That's right. I mean, just accepting that. They take the basic characters and they come up with.
But it's again that enigma where he goes, I'm not going to tell anybody.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell Lizzie, but it's up to her what she wants to do with it. I don't work for anybody. I'm not hired by anybody to do this case. So this is my conclusion and I solved it. And so he's happy for himself that he solved it. And that was the whole point, right?
Right. He solved it, but he just stopped there. Right.
He stopped there. So it's riddled with typographical errors. This is the book that required the best editor to play around with it. Names are often, Andrew is called John. It's just got it has a lot of typographical errors. It's not written errors. It's not author errors in terms of
just some continuity things.
Right. There's just
Yeah.
It needed a good reading over by somebody who could catch those things, and I don't think it happened. So readers may feel typo, ooh, typo, like weird typos, but you know that they're typos. So it's kind of like, oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, if you just accept that, and frankly, when you read any book these days, there's always typos. It's just
Yeah, but there's a lot in this book. There's like,
So
yeah.
I wanted to just remind people that the name of it, Sherlock Holmes and the Incident in Fall River by D.A. Joy, and it's by Domhnall Publishing, and it was just published this year, 2025. So
Yeah,
it's
I think people who like the case or do the crossover
yeah,
with any kind of detective and Lizzie,
yeah,
it's worth the read.
yeah,
Just even for the ingenious solutions to the big enigmas in my mind. I really
yeah,
thought he did a really yeoman's job of that. And I also felt that it was I don't know how to say this, the best written of them all, that it was the most enjoyable read in terms of the way it was written. I liked the way this man writes. So if he
yes,
could have
I agree.
only, yeah, so I think he three cheers for that.
And I only question whether you liked it because it does kind of play fast and loose with a lot of the relationships of you that you know about the real people.
I don't really
That's
have a
all.
problem with that because I'm one of those people that like the Lizzie Borden Chronicles, you know. So
True. Yeah,
again,
I
it's so
couldn't
silly and so
stomach that.
farcical that it works for me. So that's fine.
Okay, good. Okay.
The last book that we read is when was it published?
Oh, let's see. It's called Maplecroft
Sherlock Holmes Maplecroft Message
Maplecroft Message, that's right.
by Joe DeSantis.
Joe DeSantis. And it's Belanger Books Publishing, right?
Yes.
I just don't have the year. You have the book there, so it's recent, I know.
2022.
2022. Okay.
Okay. This book is unlike any other book,
The one.
except at any other book written about Lizzie Borden, but it's very much like that television series I mentioned, which is the Lizzie Borden Chronicles, where she's like this serial killer, right?
Yeah.
So this book has 6 murders in it,
Yes.
and it's not trying to be factually accurate because he
Oh
could if he
no.
wanted to, and he's not. I
No.
mean, because it was simple stuff that he changed the facts to. So I'm deciding that it didn't matter in the grand story he was telling. And since he had all these people die that didn't die or weren't murdered that are murdered, real people, real life people that were killed, I figured he was it didn't matter about anything, that he was giving himself free rein to write this serial killer sort of story.
Yeah, it's
And
a horror. It's a horror story.
it's really is a horror story.
Yeah.
So it takes place in 1894.
So Lizzie's been acquitted.
Well, wait, though, we've got Sherlock Holmes and Watson in Provincetown on
Yes.
vacation. This is great. So they're in Provincetown, and Watson has designed this great vacation for them to go up and down, to go from Provincetown to Boston, various cities down below, all the way to DC. And that's going to be an historical vacation for them both. And so he's he's so funny. He reads about all these places they're going to go to, and he's jam-packed in his head with all these historical tidbits about these places that he wants to share with Holmes. So he's like, and Holmes is like all excited, like, this is the perfect vacation for us. So yeah, let's do this. And somehow Lizzie Borden finds out that Sherlock Holmes is in Provincetown and sends him a telegram saying, I have been accused again of a murder. Will you help me? Because I am innocent. And Watson's like, no, we're on vacation.
Yeah,
No,
he's like,
no. We can't. And Holmes is like, doesn't decide till the last minute. Yeah, we're going to Fall River. So they go to Fall River, and he's like, I promise you, Watson, it'll be quick. And I'm just working for her. She's hiring me. And if I find out that, she's innocent, then that's fine. And then he ends up becoming sort of a double agent. So he's not only working for her, he's working for the police. Would Sherlock Holmes as a character do that?
Well, he does that because he thinks that she might be guilty, right? I mean,
Right.
because he thought, well, I can't work for the criminal.
Well, but he does work for the criminal and he doesn't work for the police and they're not paying him. So
Yeah, but they
didn't
usually
he
don't
not tell the
pay
police
him.
anything? Didn't he not get involved in the police investigations?
You mean in the canon and the
In the
other stories?
canon of
Oh, absolutely he did. Yeah. Because usually they're the ones who would call him, come and say, "Hey, can you help us?
okay.
We
So
have an
this has a
unusual case."
precedent in the canon for him to work both sides.
Yeah, well, sometimes he worked for the person who has a mystery that they want Holmes to solve, and sometimes he worked for the police, were perplexed by the crime and don't know what to do. So for something unusual, they usually go to Holmes for that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
he does end up becoming this person who works for both sides. And there's 5 murders, almost going to be 6, but he makes sure that the 6th person doesn't die.
Yes.
The people that die, shall we say? Shall we
Well,
say who dies? Shall we list the murders
sure.
and then the solution? Okay, so this whole next conversation is spoiler alert. So the first person that dies is Eli Bence. He
Yes,
is, of
and
course, the druggist that supposedly said, who said, not supposedly said, who said that Lizzie came in to buy prussic acid the day before the murders. He did not testify at the trial, however, because it was ruled inadmissible. But somehow he's still a bad guy, even though it didn't come up at the trial, and even though Lizzie was acquitted. So all of a sudden in 1894, people are getting killed in Fall River. So he's poisoned, which I think is kind of a, I don't know, a super great way for him to go.
right, because it was the poison that he
It's
claimed she bought or tried to buy, but he didn't sell it to her.
no.
So she didn't even get it. So, right. So she's accused of his murder, and that's when she writes to Holmes, correct?
She's accused of Eli Bence's murder, and yes, that's why
Yeah.
she writes him. But the weirdest thing is that it comes out that she is the killer of Eli's. So for her to write Holmes and say, I'm being accused and I'm innocent, but she's really guilty. The whole reason why she writes him, she wrote him so that she could one up him, that she wanted to outsmart Sherlock Holmes. So we have a Lizzie Borden here that's created that's kind of diabolical and sort of a megalomaniac who thinks that her way of doing things will even outsmart the great Sherlock Holmes. And she is innocent because she asks him in. So she's given a presumption of innocence because why would a guilty person, and even Watson asked this question, why would a guilty person ask you to come help them solve the crime when they in fact did it? It's an interesting twist that way also. And then the next person that dies is Andrew Jennings, her lawyer, and he gets hacked to death on his front steps.
Ooh, yeah.
Very brutally killed, very discovered by his wife when she opens the door when he's supposed to be home. It's like very sad and very creepy. You have Eli Bence, who was against Lizzie Borden. You have Andrew Jennings, who was for Lizzie Borden. So now they're like, wait, it can't be Lizzie, because why would she kill Andrew Jennings? That's her friend. It puts the kind of the guilt on something else. It has to be something else. And this is where Hilliard comes in a lot because he's still the chief of police and he asks Holmes to help him. He's willing to let Holmes help him because he really thinks Lizzie's guilty. He's convinced Lizzie's guilty and he's hell bent on convicting her because she got away with the murder of her parents. Well, her mother and her stepmother and father. So he's got a reputation to uphold and nobody thinks he knows how to do his job because she got away with it in his mind. He wants Holmes, he finally acquiesces to say, will you help me? Especially with the Jennings murder. Holmes has got to play both sides in this story. And then the next person that dies, well, he doesn't really die right away, he dies in the end of the story, is there's an arson at the newspaper that was anti-Lizzie Borden. And the editor is severely burned in the fire and he'll never be an editor again. He can't move his arms and he's like charred, and it's just really sad. And Holmes goes to visit him, and it's just really like sad and like very terrible situation and visual scene of this guy who's burned and can't really talk and say a lot, but he's willing to help. And then the next person that dies is Reverend Chubb, who was by Lizzie's side the whole time. So once again, he has a heart attack apparently. And so they're saying, well, it can't be Lizzie. It can't be anybody. He wasn't really murdered. He has had a heart attack. And that's also somebody who's for Lizzie. So it keeps going back and forth, for, against, for, against, for, against. And then the next murder is sadly Rufus Hilliard. He gets killed and attacked while he's walking in the park, and he gets some kind of big stone or some kind of implement, hits him in the forehead and crushes his skull, and his brains come out. I mean, it's just ugly. And so they kill off Rufus Hilliard.
And remind everybody who Hilliard is.
He's the chief of police who tried to convict Lizzie Borden with his police investigation of the murders, and he believed her to be guilty. There's somebody who was against her who dies. So you got 4 against, 4 against, 4 against. And then the most gruesome murder happens. It's the foreman of the jury who was for her is murdered and is actually decapitated. It's just disgusting. It gets more and more extreme and bloody with each murder. So then he introduces this character who is a psychic, right? And she works as a seamstress, and she comes up to Holmes and feeds him some kind of insight. And he listens to her. And he really says at the end that he couldn't have solved the case without her, which is super strange for, I think, him to rely on this psychic woman to steer him in a different direction. Is that an homage to Conan Doyle himself?
Oh, yes. I think definitely that was a nod to Arthur Conan Doyle and his belief in spiritualism. And as he got older, it was a very, very strong belief. So much so that he said, you just need faith to believe. You didn't even have to prove anything anymore. So he was a spiritualist, and he spent the latter part of his life proselytizing for it. So yes, he was a strong believer in mediums, and he used them. I mean, when Agatha Christie went missing, he even used a medium to try and find where she was. So yeah, he was a strong believer in it.
So
his own wife was a spiritualist too.
Well, she was a medium and a clairvoyant, right?
Go ahead.
She had sessions and could talk to the dead.
Jean Leckie, she was a medium for the family. I mean, she didn't really do it necessarily for other people. She did try to do it for Harry Houdini rather disastrously. At that point, she would write letters. She would say that she was getting messages, and she would
automatic
write letters
writing and stuff.
With a lot of that automatic writing. And Harry Houdini, of course, didn't believe any of it, and called her out and Doyle out about it. So their friendship didn't last long after that.
Because Sherlock Holmes in the story believes the medium and gives her credence in her thoughts about the case, he takes her seriously. Is that an homage to Conan Doyle, or is that something that the character of Sherlock Holmes ever did in any of the stories?
No, Sherlock Holmes would never believe any of that. Not at all. It wasn't in the stories. He would never use a spiritualist.
Okay, so this has to be a connection to Doyle himself.
But it's to Doyle himself.
So in this story, there's also this paranormal element that comes out of sort of nowhere, but it doesn't. It's foreshadowed when Holmes and Watson go to the house and they sense something eerie in the house or about the house, or something's unnatural about the house itself. In this story, the house possesses one of the characters in an evil way and drives her mad. And so the spoiler alert of all spoiler alerts is half the murders Lizzie did, and the other half the murders Emma did.
she's possessed,
as
though.
she's possessed by the house. So they had gone to the house to decide if they were going to sell it. And it was at that time she gets possessed.
And that's the house where the murders occurred.
Right. So she's in some kind of a fugue state when she does this and has no memory of it. So she ends up getting, her justice is she gets institutionalized at the end of the story. So she's mad and she's been put away. Now, what's interesting is if he believes in the paranormal and the house possessed her, why is an insane asylum a great place for her? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, it kind of doesn't make sense in that regard.
And then Lizzie's excuse for doing the murders is something called dementia. What is it? Dementia Praerox, Praerox, where she has some kind of a disorder in her head. And so she's not responsible either for the crime she commits because she has this problem with her brain, according to an immediate diagnosis by Watson.
Right.
There is no justice
Right.
for all of these murders that happen. And he does adjudge that Lizzie Borden actually killed her father and stepmother. So at the end of this story, Lizzie Borden has killed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And Emma has killed 1, 2, 3. And they save Alice Russell because
right.
Because she's going to be the next victim, and they make sure that Lizzie is not alone with her ever because she's the person that Lizzie would kill. It's this very convoluted, complicated sort of wham, bam, murder everywhere kind of story that reminded me of the Lizzie Borden Chronicles. And because it reminded me of that, because I liked that show, because I liked how ridiculous it was in its killing of people that were real and didn't die that way. And these kind of absurdity of it all, of her being a serial killer. I really had to give DeSantis credit for the ingenious way in which he tells his story and the way he fashions his tale with all of these murders. And so, again, it's okay with me that he does this. I'm not at all offended that he kills off all these people. I'm not at all offended. It is a bit horror-y and a lot of blood and a lot of violence.
A lot horror.
More than even in our heads that we can remember the Borden murders themselves. But it's pretty gruesome. If you like the horror aspect of the idea of putting a horror story on top of Lizzie Borden, this is the book for you. It's got everything that you would want. It even has the paranormal thrown in at the end. It's very rich and juicy, I guess you'd say, when it comes to what it's trying to do, which is entertain.
That's true. Yeah, definitely entertaining if you like that sort of thing, if you like horror and yeah. But he also did his research in terms of like who each character was, whether Lizzie would consider them to be for her or against her. I thought that was kind of fun.
There were factual errors throughout the book too.
Sure.
And like I said, he didn't even bother looking some things up, and that was fine. I mean, after a while, I'm like, oh, okay. Like you start to make a mental note of them, and then you're like, why bother? It can't be real. So why do I worry that these things are real? So it's not.
No, it wasn't. He wasn't really trying to solve the murders. He was just trying to make a horror story out of.
Yes, a horror story out of it. A kind of campy, rompy horror story where so many people are killed that it's like every day there's a new murder, like every single day. It's the psyche that leads him to believe it's more than one murderer because there's more than one motive. So when you have two motives, you have two murderers. And I thought, oh, okay, that works for me.
Yeah. Well, we know that in the Lizzie Borden world, there is a lot about ghost hunting and the paranormal.
Correct.
So
it's turned into a lot of that. And every single ghost show visits the Borden house and does their investigation, every single one. So it's been investigated, and they have ghost tours there, and it's owned by a ghost tour company. It's emphasized. It's not something that people would walk away from, I guess, because if there's a lot of people interested in the paranormal, there's a lot of people who believe. And so because there's a market for that, or they wouldn't be doing it. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's one of the most popular places for ghost hunting, I think.
Yeah, because they keep saying that they're like the most haunted house in America kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right.
The paranormal part, figuring into it, is interesting and sort of modern, right? Like you said.
Yes, I think so.
So he really hits every button. He hits every mark in his book, where he hits the mark of the serial killer, he hits the mark of the horror story, he hits the mark of the paranormal, he hits the mark of Sherlock Holmes in a new way. His Sherlock Holmes is different than other Sherlock Holmes, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so, because first of all these murders happen on his watch. I mean, he's
he gets whisked away to the new one.
And I'm like, really? They all happen right under his nose.
Okay, so this book has this interesting character that's
Freddie,
invented
right?
called Freddie, who is the boarding coachman, who is from London, and he knows Holmes, and he's met him before. He's like taking him around and showing him stuff and giving him the lowdown and giving him the gossip of the town. He's an interesting character that's developed, that is pretty well developed in the story. And you like seeing him and you want to see more of him. And Holmes brings him into the story and sort of sits him down and feeds him and stuff like that. So he's considered a resource for Holmes, as well as someone who knows him. I guess the 1894 timeline of this makes it after the Great Hiatus, right?
Yes.
So it's okay that he's like outing himself throughout this story because he's back.
Right.
And this guy knew him when they were in London. He was a cabbie in London and was always on the third in line. Was that a thing, that Holmes always picked the third cab in line?
Yeah, there's a story where Holmes is instructing Watson to not take the first cab. He wants, because it turns out it's his brother Mycroft who's going to be the cabbie, because he doesn't trust Moriarty and his gang. He thinks they're going to kidnap Watson, so he wants Watson to wait for the third one, and that's going to be his brother.
So that's an homage to that. So this guy knows his Sherlock Holmes, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
He definitely
he knows his Sherlock Holmes, and he knows his Conan Doyle, and he's writing a story that has this fantastical Lizzie Borden thrown in. Could have been any sort of murder mystery, but the fact that he creates it and this is real people, it's sort of a romp through death.
Yes.
It's not funny, but it becomes this, just a lot of people die. And it's another one and another one and another one and another one. There's that.
Well, it keeps you guessing a little bit, because it's not just revenge. It's not just Lizzie's revenge, because there are people that were on her side who die. So you're like,
right. So it's the motives are different for each of the murders. Every other murder is a different motive. And that in itself is intriguing to how is he going to solve this? Again, if somebody is interested in this kind of book, it's a good read, and it's an interesting book, and I wouldn't throw it out the window.
No, not at all.
Because I'm intrigued by the way he tells it and what happens. It's never, ever you can predict what's going to happen.
Oh, in this book, certainly not. No,
it's a whodunit. It really is a whodunit.
Yeah, and the fact that he throws in the medium and then the
cab driver,
the cab driver and the paranormal with the house, then anything can happen.
Right. Anything
can introduce the paranormal, then it could be anything.
Right.
So yeah, so I think that we chose well. There are 4 interesting books, each in their own way, and and I think we found some definite positive things about each one.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't write fiction. Do you write fiction? No. So Jen creating this stuff out of nothing.
I know. That's
amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And sitting down and writing it and getting it published, I mean, it's a big deal. It's yay authors for doing that.
Exactly. Exactly. I feel the same. Yes, I'm always impressed, like, wow, and then this is how they treated this character and this is what they did. And yeah. And then having to kind of trying to write in the Sherlockian sense of the way Conan Doyle did, and then having a real person, Lizzie, in the real case, and how to handle that and incorporate the two. So they each did it differently, but
Yes.
I think
They completely did it differently.
Yeah.
The Maplecroft Message said Lizzie did it. The incident at Fall River, no, Lizzie didn't do it. The Sherlock Holmes and the Fall River tragedy, Lizzie did it, but with help. And the Holmes and Watson, he says she does it, but he can't prove it. So yeah, it's a amalgam. It's a plethora of solutions.
Yes, that's
for
right.
people to partake of.
Right.
And it just might inspire somebody to think a new way about the case, which is what fiction does. It inspires people to go, oh, I never thought of that before, even though it's fiction.
Right.
Especially about the note. To me, that was like, yay, somebody finally explained the note in the course of their fiction. That was great. He tried really hard to explain the inexplicable. That was joy. And he did it. I think it was a really good experience reading all these books, and it makes me appreciate the fiction writer in the nonfiction world, especially when Lizzie Borden's concerned, and also allows me to give them free rein to do as they will with the story, because it's fiction.
Yes, exactly.
There's so many people who are really prudes about that kind of thing and say, oh, no, they must get everything right or it will be trashed. No, it's fiction. You do what you want. I mean, Abraham Lincoln was not a vampire killer, right?
Vampire hunter, yes.
Vampire hunter. He wasn't a vampire hunter, but that was a really entertaining book. So I liked it.
Right. Well,
it's exceptionally not true, right?
Right.
It's fantasy.
Just, I think they did that with Jane Austen too, and there was a
and Richard's books where Lizzie Borden is a girl detective. It didn't happen, but there's so much verisimilitude. There's so much reality. There's so much authenticity to the Lizzie Borden girl detective stories that all of it seems real to me. All of it seems right. All of it.
Right. It's he worked really hard, I know, to make it the real place and the real characters, at least
and
the family, the
personalities of the characters.
Yes.
While introducing fictional characters into the story. So
right.
I think that if you read these, you absolutely have to read all of Richard Behrens' books, Lizzie Borden Girl Detective. You have to read them all. You will go, what a writer, what an amazing mind. I love it. And it'll just make you just sing because they're all so good. All of them. Great springboard into other Lizzie fiction.
That's true. And of course I'm pretty biased, but I think they're wonderful as well. And not only that, like he was a Sherlockian, Richard. So if when you read his stories, you'll recognize like, oh, okay, it's just kind of an homage to Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
As well.
She's a little Sherlock Holmes. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though Holmes isn't in the stories, he sort of is in terms of her methods and the kind of that style of writing,
And so much humor. There's so much humor in them.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
He was quite a funny man. So
thank you for this opportunity to discuss these 4 books and for you proposing this idea to kind of blend our worlds with Sherlock Holmes and Lizzie Borden into some kind of a way of talking about not only the case, but about Sherlock Holmes. Because last time we talked to Tracy about her teaching Sherlock Holmes and Lizzie Borden. And I think this is a perfect segue from that into what do people write about her,
Exactly, right. Where she teaches the Sherlock Holmes methods and then uses the students have to use those methods to solve the Lizzie Borden case.
And that's Dr. Tracy Revels.
Yes. And
so if you haven't heard that podcast, you need to listen to that after this one. Luckily, you're following along and you've heard that one and now you're listening to this one. So yeah, that'll work out great too. But they're connected. So in a good way.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie.
Another interesting story time for both of us.
All right. Well, we'll see you again next time.
Same place, same bat time, same bat cave, same bat.
Exactly.
What was the phrase? Same bat
channel.
Same bat channel. There you go. Same thing. Everything.
Our misfit youth.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, your audience, for listening to us once again. And we'll be with you again shortly. Ta-ta.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Lizzie Borden Podcast, episode 38. We've been speaking with Anna Behrens about 4 works of fiction that effectively cross over into history in their unique telling of Sherlock Holmes and the Borden murders. Find Richard Behrens' Lizzie Borden Girl Detective stories at Amazon.com and at LizzieBordenGirlDetective.com, where you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Listen to more Lizzie Borden podcasts on our website or on Podbean, Audible, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube. Please support this podcast through a subscription on Patreon. Thank you.